Thank you all for joining for the very first edition of Ask an Environmentalist. And I can't imagine a more appropriate and better guest to have than MPP Peter Tabuns. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Sandy. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Peter is the MPP for Toronto Danforth, and he is our party's critic when it comes to energy and the climate crisis. Peter, you have an extended background in this before you came to Queen's Park, and I have to say I know that you have lived through, the Liberals' gas plant scandals and the privatization of our hydro system. And I have to say, on a personal note, I have learned so much from you as a new MPP in the House.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure. And so I wanted to start by just asking you. It's been a busy week at Queen's Park with all things COVID related and also environmentally related. And so what's on your mind this morning, Peter?
All right, Sandy, I wish I could confine it to one or two things, but I think everyone out there right now is grappling with the COVID crisis, the pandemic. And it's been very frustrating to me, and I think many people, yourself included, that we can't even get some of the most elementary things put in place to stop the spread of the disease. Paid sick time so that people will stay home rather than going into work when they're feeling sick. The investment in schools, so we have smaller class sizes, we have testing, we have better ventilation. These things that would actually allow us to reduce the numbers substantially, things that would make a difference in terms of bringing the pandemic under control so that we could get back to a more normal life and actually also protect us until we can get vaccines out very widely. And I think it's been a real lesson for me in terms of the climate crisis, that even when it's so apparent that things are coming apart, that it can be very difficult to get governments that don't accept science to actually do what is necessary to bring the problem under control. And that's been frustrating for me. I've been seeing it play out in places like Texas, which for the last few days has had these huge power blackouts because they have a privatized, deregulated electricity system where major companies weren't required to make the investments necessary to keep the system running, keep it stable and secure. And we here in Ontario have, as you said earlier, lived through a very extensive privatization process, which the current government, I think, wants to continue rolling on. We know that if you don't actually have an energy system that responds to the needs of people, but responds to the needs of investors, then frankly, you're going to have the kinds of blackouts and problems we're seeing there in Texas now. So those problems where we're continuing to see private interests looked after, and we've seen that with big box stores being allowed to be open while small businesses are getting really put into a difficult position with the necessary lockdowns. You see that in Texas with privatization, putting investors before residents. All of those things have been on my mind. And again, just saying that's the context that we operate in when we're trying to come to grips with the climate crisis.
Absolutely. It can be really overwhelming. And I know in my constituency office, I'm sure just like yours, people are emailing and phoning, and they're really struggling with the things that you talked about, being able to pay their rent, small businesses that can hardly keep their doors open or are closing, and folks that have family members in long-term care. There's a lot of suffering out there and a lot of angst. But I also know that people are concerned while everyone's focusing on COVID and keeping themselves and their family and their neighbors safe, that there's a sense that this government behind their back, essentially, or while they're distracted, are not addressing the climate crisis. And in fact, are doing a lot of things to make it worse. When we talk about these ministers' zoning orders that are allowing development on sensitive lands, we saw what they have done to, the conservation authorities to limit their ability to weigh in on these important issues. And, last night I had a town hall talking about the threats to agricultural land, which also plays a role in our emissions and reducing our emissions. So, I think people eventually are going to understand that this, as you said, this government does not take climate seriously. They don't listen to science. and that they are effectively working not on behalf of the people of Ontario. So I don't know if that's, if you wanted to comment on some of those destructive efforts that Ford's busy making while everybody else is struggling with the COVID crisis.
Well, no, I appreciate you raising that. And I'm just going to touch on, too, the assault on the conservation authorities. We set those up to protect people from extreme weather. A variety of things, but that was the core of it. And effectively what he's done with his new legislation is eliminate that so that people in the future may well be buying homes on floodplains where their property and their lives will be at risk, with the watchdogs, the guardians, having been sidelined. And when you run a system so that developers get rich and people take these huge risks, you are not acting in a way that's responsible. Frankly, I don't think you're acting in a way that's moral. That is huge. And I think as well, we all need to keep in mind, because we're dealing with COVID right now, that if we don't bring the climate crisis under control, if we don't stabilize, then we're going to see a lot more pandemics in our future. We've had a taste of it. We don't like it. We don't want more of it. And I think that this is yet one other argument that is there. Take action now, slow down the crisis, stabilize global weather, stabilize global temperature, and give us a chance to actually have a future.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I just have to say, I had a new granddaughter come to this world yesterday. Her name is May, and it's such a beautiful, spring name. Yeah, isn't it lovely? And it's a glimmer of hope. And it is exactly what I was thinking about. Is that we are stewards of this world that they will inherit, and it is all up to all of us to do that. So I just thought I'd take the chance to mention that. And I would also say, Peter, what you said is exactly right. I was so shocked by how many people were speaking out against the changes of the Conservation Authority, and people who understood the role that play in climate change. And since then, I've had more people that are engaged in this issue than ever before. And so I guess, I'm going to ask you, with your long history of helping people understand the issue and engage in the issue, what are some of the suggestions you would have for people that want to help to do better, to make us improve our situation?
A really good question. I think educating themselves, certainly for me, it's been a many-year process of educating myself about the issue. But I think now there's a lot more material available. There's a lot more scientific certainty. People can pick this up pretty quickly. Educate yourself and then speak out. Speak to family, speak to friends, write letters to the editor, attend demonstrations, go to public meetings. In the end, we're only going to be able to deal with this issue if governments take substantial, bold action. And they will only do that if public opinion is strongly in favor of that bold, aggressive action. So to the extent that you can shape the opinion of people around you, that you can change the atmosphere politically, then you can ensure that governments will actually, you can increase the chances dramatically that governments will do the right thing. At some point, the demands are going to have to be so strong that it will be irrelevant what the partisan nature of the government is. They will be forced to act. And I look at Quebec, where you've got a fairly right-wing government operating in a province where taking on the climate crisis is critical. Mm-hmm. And as much as that government would like to veer dramatically away from that agenda, they can't. Not without destroying themselves politically. And we need to set things up in Ontario and really around the world so that governments can no longer just put it off, that they're forced by public opinion to act.
Yeah, thanks for that, people. And I think people underestimate the power of speaking up, simple actions, the collective action. We're seeing people like at Duffins Creek, Stratford, a small tiny hamlet, if you will, spoke out against a glass plant that was unwelcome there. So I think that it's, as much as we're faced with daunting challenges, it is so heartwarming to see that we can make a change when we speak up. So, we'll continue to have these Ask an Environmentalist sessions. I know, Peter, you continue to do the fantastic work that you are doing to address this climate crisis. And I want to thank you for taking a chance to be my very first guest on Ask an Environmentalist. I appreciate it.
Well, it was a real pleasure. I'd be happy to be back with you anytime. And good luck with the series.
Thank you. And I'll take you up on that offer.
Okay.
Have a good day, Peter.
You too, Sam.
Bye.